Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. Welcome to the second day of the Tourism into Mars World Conference. Today, we are starting with two speakers on the subject of major tourism attractions and infrastructure. Please welcome Mr. Gregory Clarkson, from the Senior Planner from Ashghal, the Public Works Authority in Qatar.
أهلا وسهلا بكم في اليوم الثاني من مؤتمر السياحة في عالم الغد. ويفتتح فعالياته متحدثان يتناولان موضوعي المعالم السياحية الرئيسية والبنية التحتية. رحبوا معي رجاء بغريغوري كلاركسون، كبير المخططين في هيئة الأشغال العامة والمسؤول عن تنفيذ عمليات التخطيط في قطر.
My name is Gregory Clarkson. I am the Senior Planner and Project Advisor for the President's Office at Ashghal, which is Qatar's Public Works Authority. 2 years ago, I joined Ashghal and was given the very special assignment of designing and delivering a world-class zoological attraction. That's unusual. In some other countries, we'd probably hit the floor. To date, the new zoo has gone through concept design. It's most of the way through schematic design. We have closed the existing zoo. We are preparing for relocation of the animals and the decommissioning of the existing zoo in preparation for the construction of the new zoo. Contracts have been let in enabling works for the site and also for the construction of the holding and temporary holding facilities for the relocation of the existing animals, a very important aspect of the job. Significant progress has been made to date, and momentum is continually building behind this project. So it's a very exciting project, a very timely time to actually speak about it at a symposium like this. Today I'm here to offer you a snapshot of this project and the genesis and what has occurred to date. But more importantly, not just talking about the project and its content, but our approach to how we deliver a project of this nature in a very small country with a very small population. So, with that said, what is this thing we call the new National Zoo? It is truly a world-class zoo, one of the world's best zoos in terms of the quality of uniqueness and quality of the visitor experience. We will have the star animal attractions in immersive environments, natural habitats. We will have day and night time experiences. We have indoor and outdoor experiences. This is very important in this climate. We'll have drive, walk, and ride experiences. We'll have multiple venues and attractions other than just the zoo. We'll have themed retail, catering, and hospitality. In essence, we are more than a zoo. In context, it's very important to understand the location. If people that are familiar with the city, we are located across from Aspire Park. There is an existing zoo there of about 12 hectares that, again, was being decommissioned as we speak. The new site for the zoo is about in excess of 71 hectares, a very good size for a project of this magnitude. Across the street is Aspire Park, a well-established natural park within the city. And adjacent to that, of course, is the Villaggio Mall, a very important partner to us because of its 14 million footfall that it experiences on an annual basis. Aspire Park, Villaggio Mall, and the zoo form a continuum in our approach to this project, and the three of them need to be knit together in our design so that collectively we all benefit from one another. So the concept of the zoo, the mission statement, to create a world-leading model for integrated nature conservation and visitor experiences that exemplifies the personal, family, and national aspects of Qatari vision and pride. How can we achieve something of such a bold magnitude? By making it relevant and doing it well. What is relevant? What is doing it well? Relevant is relevant to world standards of the zoological community, conservation programs, being accepted and doing things by the rules in a very serious business of zoological conservation. Relevant also to Qatari core values, which is doing things in an appropriate fashion. Things that are culturally appropriate, things that are respectful, things that are not cliche, but instead reflect well upon the nation by and large. What is doing it well? This was spoke about to some degree yesterday by John Eng and others. What is doing it well? It's to focus on, deliver on the promise. Tell a good story, but most importantly, deliver it well. Put the focus on the quality of the experience, on the service and the product itself. If we do this right, we have a chance to make a unique and memorable experience. And if we do that right, we have a chance to beginning to establish what we call a national Qatari brand. The zoo layout is made up of many components. I will now try to see there. Does that show up? No, I'll have to go with the pointer. I'm sorry on this. Hang on. Okay. Can everybody see that? Unfortunately, I didn't have time to break this into pieces and get the consultants to do this the way I would like. So, enough said. The entry point of the zoo is in this area. It's in the current area where it currently is. In addition to that, there is a significant drive-through African safari. There is also a walk-through African safari. Those two I will explain to you later are quite different. There is a very generous elephant habitat that runs down the spine of the project and actually reaches over our major artery, Al Wab, and goes into Aspire Park to help work towards that connectivity I spoke of earlier between Aspire Park and our site. There is the Asian drive-through safari, which is more of a mountain kind of experience. There's the Asian walk-through safari. And then there is the tropical or rainforest environment called South America at this point, but really it's tropical. Very important to talk about this particular area is that it's unique to this area because it will be a controlled biosphere, but not one that's like Eden where it goes to the ground and it's not a biodome. It's actually a roof system that allows air to move through so that it doesn't feel too artificial. It's going to be a trick for us. It'll be the first time it's ever been done in the world. It's also an interesting space because it will rain periodically. So that's a different thing for us, people that are not familiar with a lot of rain here. To have the opportunity to go into a space and once an hour it drizzles and that pitter-patter of rain, it's a whole different effect. It's taking you to another place. There's also a river ride through this environment that will give you another way of circulating through the project and experiencing the project. There's the back of house, of course, which is a very serious space. This is where all the animal husbandry and the serious science of animal welfare and maintenance within the zoological world resides. It's also the back of house for all the food and beverage and all of the other entities that will be a part of this project. And then at the core, a very important place we call the village. Now, I'll talk to you about the village later, but it's really the organization point around which a lot of things organize and which a lot of things attach to. And the importance of this particular area will become apparent shortly. And then, most importantly, is that the entire project is embraced, it is wrapped in what we call a public park open space network, which is really an extension of Aspire Park. So really, when you're in Aspire Park, it's very easy for you to just go ahead and take a walk around this thing. And it comes up with the prime directive that was given to us in the beginning of this project, is that His Highness wanted a zoo within a park. And that's how we're achieving this, is that we're allowing it to be part of the fabric of everyday participation in our park systems here that are so precious and valuable to the people of this country. Okay. Circulation. This is very important, how we're achieving this. There's, as I mentioned earlier, sorry, bear with me here. This is the driving safari. That's a vehicle-oriented experience. There is the walking safari on the interior of that space, which is only for a passive pedestrian experience. And then the big four, what I call the big four, the connectivity, these arteries that go over and penetrate into Aspire Park and culminate with an association with Villaggio Mall. Those being a dedicated tram system in red, a dedicated tram system, which will be like a bus system, but it will be articulated and themed. That begins at the mall or even Aspire Zone beyond that, and begins to craft the journey of people that get on that, and we can have, you know, people doing performances and whatnot and taking you on a bit of and build up the anticipation of getting to the zoo. But it's a bus service is what it is. It's getting people from the mall to our front door across four and change kilometers of distance in a comfortable way, at the same time providing entertainment and anticipation. The second and third are the existing pathways and bikeways that are all over Aspire Park to create recreation and get people to participate, exercise in the country. So we're just really bolting onto that and extending those pathways out and through and around our zoo. And the fourth connectivity is a very fun piece. It's called a cable car safari, and it's have a station in Villaggio that will bring people all the way over into our front door. Another very exciting aspect and dimension to the project in a lot of different ways, because it's a ride in itself. It's not necessary that you use it as a way to get to the front door. You may turn around and go right on back. You know, you just go take the ride, because I just had a really cool ride over a zoo, and I'm going back to continue my shopping. You know, this is the kind of approach we're taking to entice people to come and participate, because quite often if you come across, we might as well get off and see what it's all about. It's curiosity making, exposure, invitation. This is a graphic of the master plan. A project of this size, it's very hard to see the detail, but it does tell you about the organic nature of the project and how it culminates really in an organization at one end of the project. That's done intentionally, so we have draw to the polar end, otherwise that end would starve, potentially. I don't want to get too technical in design terms here. So. Zooming in at the village core and the walking safari areas, and there you can clearly see the biodome in its infancy. It's not designed yet, it will not look like that. It's indicative, it's a place marker at this time. And then on the other side is the safari and the what we call the elephant bridge that reaches over into, physically reaches over and into Aspire Park, a very, very important part of the project, because a couple different ways is it creates connectivity, it connects physically without having to negotiate across a busy thoroughfare, and very importantly also, it's a very good advertisement because periodically we will have elephants moving across this bridge. And so actually as you're driving up Al Wab, it's going to be a traffic stopper, and we're not sure how we're going to control that just yet. But that's a challenge. But imagine, you know, you're driving up this road and all of a sudden there's elephants walking across this land bridge, which are illustrated very effectively here. And this is one of a kind. This is unique and different for our little country and for this interesting project. A couple of sections I want to take you through. The lower one here really talks to how we've created separation in that public park domain that wraps and embraces the park, embraces the zoo. This is very important too, because these are very busy thoroughfares, these roads that are running by us. It's not necessarily healthy for the animals to have to have that kind of animal or vehicle noise and pollution that is associated. So how do you protect that? How do you create sanctuary for these animals so that they're happiest as they can possibly be? Well, one of the ways is to create these very generous buffer zones using landforms and distance to protect and buffer the noise and the invasion of the streetscape to the animal habitat itself. At the same time, you can clearly see that we have pathways, tram systems all running through this space, so it's properly employed. And very interestingly, what we've done is that on occasion, we would create promontories, points of invitation, where people that are moving along that walkway and having that park experience will be invited to go up and have a glimpse into the zoo from a controlled point and say, oh, isn't that interesting? I want to know more. And again, it's one of these kinds of techniques that we use to create curiosity and eventual participation by, again, a very limited, small population and a limited demographic. The top section is an illustration that helps to effectively communicate how we accomplish a vehicle-oriented experience versus a pedestrian-oriented experience, and yet we can share the same animal exhibit, the same animal habitat. So you're actually not seeing the vehicle, you're not aware it's there, they're not seeing you if you're a pedestrian, but you're both seeing other sides or opposite sides of a similar common attraction. So this is a technique we use to create parallel circulation and experiential routes without having to recreate the environments. Snapshots of the driving safari, and this is just a quick picture of what that tram system might look like. You know, the articulated tram that goes all the way to Villaggio. The safari vehicles. Now there's a unique twist to this project, and then that is that you can take your personal vehicle on this safari in a highly regulated fashion. It's very important. Immediately everybody will say, how do you do that? Because it'll turn into a parking lot in the elephant enclosure, and we don't want that. So it's another challenge. You know, we've given it to our designers, and we have full confidence that we can deliver this this experience, a very unique and special experience for our project. Again, some of what that personal vehicle safari feels like, and then some glimpses of the walking safari. A more intimate scale, the river ride within the rainforest. And there's ancillary development. Now, I've talked about the entry, I've talked about the safari, I've talked about the walking zoo, we've talked about the public park that wraps and embraces this project, we've talked about the back of house. Now I really want to talk about the ancillary development or the complementary development. It's more than just a zoo. The village core is a free zone. It's not part of the zoo. You don't pay to get into this area. We did that intentionally. Again, as I talk about We have a very challenged demographic. We don't have a lot of footfall. We're not London, we're not Tokyo, we're not one of these big places with a lot of people. How do we get people to come to this space? Well, we've talked about connectivity and these issues, but what's the point of going on that connectivity? Well, it's because you want to arrive somewhere, what we call a point of social congregation. Something, again, very precious and valuable to the people that live in this country is that when we get out of our house, we're looking for a place to go. And it's not always the inside of a Villaggio Mall. It's not always city center. You know, we want to have other options. So, case in point, two big success stories would be Qatar and of course, Souk Waqif, where we tend to come together by nature because that's what we like to do. And perhaps that's maybe what we're able to do. So this is one of those kinds of spaces. This point of social congregation at a place along the journey of this park system that wraps this project is to arrive at a point of organization. Many things will happen in this area, including the gateway to the zoo, but there will be many other opportunities to participate. We also have several hospitality packages. The Treehouse Hotel, which is a 7-star, very VIP kind of hotel experience with only 12, maybe 14 units, suites, that will be elevated and up in the trees of the existing zoo site, very mature trees that we've got. So we're using that. We're going to use those canopies and we're going to run boardwalks and a resort, basically, a very small and exclusive resort through that canopy. We have the Rainforest Hotel, which effectively screens off and captures the rainforest biodome and screens us off from the back of house, which is immediately behind it. And again, this is maybe a 5-star kind of product in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 keys. And then the third is the Montaigne Family Resort, which is closer to Villaggio and is a star down and would in its rating, and it would be geared more for keys in excess of 100. These are business cases that would be developed by our JV partners going over time, but our earlier positioning on these. Very quickly, some images of what the village feels like. It's fun, but it's respectful, is what we've tried to put controls on our designers so they didn't get too Disney on us. We wanted to make sure that it had a sense of appropriateness, again, a core value, but at the same time fun, a little bit of playfulness to the architecture. Some of it's even fanciful, such as captured in these images. So snapshots of moving around the village. I'm not quite sure how I'm doing on time here, so I'll be careful. Moving around through the village. Then the destination food and beverages that will attach to this village, such as the African restaurant and the Rainforest restaurant, which are not part of the hotels. They're a separate destination package. Then I talked about the Treehouse Hotel, its location, floor plans, what that feels like. Again, a very special product, very limited. It'll be a very high price point, and we believe to be very desirable. The Rainforest Resort, as described, and the Montaigne Family Resort. And the architects, this is early thinking. It looks a bit like a termite hill at this point, but we'll see where this goes. Maybe that's not a bad thing. But the fun thing about this site is actually, the way we're early thinking on it, is that we can actually have the goats and the animals that are actually in the Montaigne region, in the Asian zone, actually get up and crawl around on this thing. So I mean, that's kind of fun. You're going to be in your hotel, in the treetop. You've got the giraffes coming up to your door, up to your doorway and your balcony. And this one, you can actually have the goats and other animals, hoof stock, participating in your experience. In the Rainforest Hotel, you have the sound of rain pitter-pattering on your roof when you wake up in the morning. So all of them have a different and unique experience. Now, This is the important stuff in a lot of ways. This is the project positioning. I mean, again, this goes back to how do you do something of this magnitude in such a small place with such small people. We're forecasting our target as 2020 is our benchmark where we feel that we'll be up and running and things will have begin to level off. We're looking at about 2.2 million residents at that time. An important consideration is 59% of that is forecast to be worker class, which will have a challenge in being able to participate in a lot of these things, but at the same time it needs to be made available to them. Tourism, talked about well yesterday, it should be hitting around 4 to 4.5 million visitation in 2020, leading up to the FIFA. Again, disproportionate amount of those visitors will be business-oriented. Not to say that excludes them, but it's a more challenged demographic. There's an important one here that a lot of people don't track, and that's what we call the VFR, which is visitors for family and relatives. They don't stay in hotels, so they don't show up on the radar, but they're very much part of our lives here because we're bringing our friends and our families over here quite frequently to be part of our experience in living in Doha, and a significant number. Our attendance, therefore, our attendance demographic is challenged. It's a small number. If you reach across those pieces of pie, you're coming up with about 2.7 million potential target across our spectrum. So how will we recreate the necessary footfall to make this a successful business and venture? And more importantly, because we don't look at this strictly from a business standpoint, from a participation standpoint. And that doesn't mean you have to spend money. We need to encourage repeat visitation. This is absolutely paramount to our whole design. That's why we've done the Village Center as a multi-gated point of organization as opposed to a singly gated zoo attraction by creating the Zoo Village with multiple things happening. Different experiences, different dwell times, different price points. Become part of the community and the lifestyle choices of the everyday residents. Promote memberships and annual passes. Rotate exhibits and attractions. Refresh the product. Create physical links, most importantly, as I've talked, to link to and attract from Aspire Park and Villaggio Mall. And this goes to a quick graphic that talks about that connectivity. We really look at Aspire Park and the zoo site as a singularity, as a large public park system in which the zoo resides. A zoo within a park. This encourages movement and circulation around our zoo without the necessity of buying a ticket to go to the zoo or some other thing. Two anchors, the Villaggio Mall and our Village Center, again, polar opposites at the end of the experience, bookends of the experience, where we are trying to create invitation and migration with the 4 different systems to our Village Center, to our front door, to our free zone, where they may participate in a zoo, or they may participate in another show or attraction, or maybe just go have a coffee or a tea on the streetscape. And then how that percolates back and closes the circuit to Villaggio. So Villaggio, in turn, benefits from our project because we have parking, underground parking. You know, it's very hard to park at Villaggio Mall. We have 2,500 parking spaces. We may just, people can get on, park there and take the tram, have a fun time, go over to Villaggio, do your shopping, come back. There's many different ways that we're trying to connect to and feed off a common energy pattern between ourselves and Villaggio Mall and Aspire Park. When you look at that 2.7 million people in the projections, by the time you take penetration rates and repeat visitation into account, we're really looking at about 1.3 million footfall to our free zone, to our front door of the zoo, of which 950 would be potential ticket purchasers of some attraction that feeds off of the village core. And this is all very important because it goes to the business model and does it make commercial sense, and are we upside down on this project? Can it sustain itself commercially? And it does sustain itself commercially. With this, and this is a conservative estimate. And also note that the projections are not inclusive of the footfall generated by the hotels and the destination food and beverage, which in its own part is running its own business and creating its own gravitational pull. So, what is the ideal? Make it local, for the people. If it thrives locally, it will be attractive to visitors. Make it memorable, create a good experience, and deliver it well. Focus on quality. But most importantly, strive to be part of a Qatar tourism brand going forward. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, if there is time allowing, I do have a video. Do we have time? Maybe later? Okay, we have a very impressive video. We'll do it later. It's about 4.5 minutes. Go for it. Thank you again.
A great spirit is rising in the desert sands, sharing an invitation across the world. As a jeweled imagination unveils a kingdom of magnificent creatures and memorable treasures to enlighten the soul and stir the senses. One that sets a new global standard for how people interact with animals in their natural habitat. A place so real and familiar to the animals that live there, and so incredible and memorable to the people who come to visit. Where we reunite as many species, sharing one precious home. An unforgettable experience that brings together the habitats of the world. And the technologies of tomorrow to create a zoological paradise and a national treasure. From the moment you enter, you are embraced by the cultural traditions of a hospitable host and a grand vision for the world's newest wonder. Ancient in its origins, modern in its conveniences, and unmatched in its comforts. Where the majesty of life in the wild fills each day with delight and surprise, and nights with mystery and enchantment. And palaces for the imagination take you to the farthest reaches of the animal kingdom and redefine the safari experience for all generations and expectations. Enveloped by spectacular accommodations and fine dining, this is a place to engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain visitors of all ages, starting with the innocent wonder of the very young who will one day inherit the cause to protect and conserve this mighty animal kingdom across the one home we all share. Each visit is a new and unique experience. On foot, in your car, by boat, or on guided excursions, setting a new standard for zoological destinations and sparking the desire to return again and again. A new day is coming, and with it, a world-class resort and global destination where animals and humans come together to share a new home with one heart.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Please now welcome Mr. Gurjeet Singh, Chief Development Officer of Aldar Properties, Abu Dhabi.
ضيوفنا الأعزاء، رحبوا معي الآن بالسيد غورجيت سينغ، مدير العمليات التشغيلية في شركة الدار العقارية بأبو ظبي.
I'll do a quick mic test to see whether the mic is on. Okay, I think it is. Assalamu alaikum, ahlan, and a very good morning to all of you. I'd like to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to be here today to share with you some of the experiences that we have had in the past few years designing, developing, and implementing various destinations. I am the Chief Development Officer of Aldar Properties. We are a public listed developer in Abu Dhabi. We have developed numerous destinations, and one of the case studies today that I will talk to you about is one of the developments that we have carried out in Abu Dhabi. I've also previously been in charge of the development of the Sentosa Island destination, and that is in Singapore. And I will also use that as a case study to talk a little bit about how a destination that has been developed in Asia has matured over the years. I've done basically two projects for you today. One is actually a written paper that talks about the design, development, implementation, and management of destinations. And this paper has been sent to the organizers, and they will probably share this with you in a soft copy form at some point. The other project is this presentation that I'm going to carry out this morning, and I'll try to keep it quite short and sweet so that we are able to still keep in touch with our timing for the day. There are a lot of words on this slide, but it's always very interesting to start a presentation about real estate development, destinations, and economic development, because some 70 years ago, this economist postulated the cycle of development. And you can take this cycle of development and implement it on any type of economic development, be it hospitality, destinations, economic development in terms of industrial development, and so on and so forth. And it talks to you about different points in a cycle. You can identify yourselves in any particular country where you are at any point in time if you just take a look at this, something that was postulated 70 years ago. It always starts with a euphoric rise. Then there is a lot of realization and stabilization. Then sometimes there is a collapse, and then you remove the wreckage and you go back into one more cycle. Interesting. And some of these principles we adopt in our daily life in terms of our development work that we carry out. I've taken this cycle and broke it down into 4 different risk quadrants. So from developing a destination's point of view, there are 4 major risk quadrants, and you can see that on the screen. I think what's important is the closer you are to the concentric, the closer the concentric rings are to the center, that's where the greatest risks are. And you know, pricing uncertainty is a major risk in our day-to-day development work. Regulatory risks are always an issue, execution risks are an issue, and also credit. If you take all these various risks in the 4 quadrants and you try to map it in terms of a matrix, and I've tried to do that here in terms of different businesses and different types of risks. If you just take a look, and you can't really see this, but if you take a look at the presentation later when it's sent to you, and you map a number of issues versus, say, asset management, which is really the building of assets in terms of what we build for destinations. A lot of assets are built and managed. And also in terms of real estate, 3 major risks always come right up to the onset: regulation, credit, and also development cycles. These are three major issues that are at the forefront of ourselves. Because we are a very focused bottom line based organization, we do a very clear risk assessment before we carry out any particular development. Our exit strategies for every single development, every single dollar of capital that goes into the ground, our exit strategies are very clear right at the onset of the entire effort. Now, here we are, we talk a lot about hospitality and tourism, and this involves a number of different activities coming together, from organizing major events to bringing artists to a particular country to perform, from creating good, excellent airlift infrastructure, good ports, expanding the airline industries, introducing low-cost air carriage and airlift into a country. The definition of themed attractions within a particular destination becomes very important because it increases the visitor stay, visitor spend, and also helps to improve the overall NOIs of the particular attraction or the destination. And you're also looking at the passive inclusion of components within a particular destination. We just heard an excellent presentation on the development of the Doha Zoo. Again, a very important retentive passive attraction that keeps the local population engaged, and it also ensures repeat visitorship, which was one of the key elements raised by the earlier speaker. Now, if you were to take a look at some of the issues that are related to the development of attractions, there are some very key multiplier effects that need to be considered. Any particular destination developed with many different components, whether they are hotels or theme parks, or even residential components, lifestyle residential components, and so on and so forth, or even venues for major events, there are three major economic implications that one needs to consider. One is the new construction analysis, which gives you a multiplier effect in terms of a dollar going into the ground produces a multifold number of multiplier revenues for various types of entities like contractors, consultants, agencies that are involved, even the government. Then you have the value-added impact analysis that needs to be carried out, and also the total inventory impact analysis. These three different components basically help you to map out the economic implications of developing a destination and their various components. This is an essential element for us. Again, I say that we are very bottom line focused, so this becomes one of the key elements in terms of how we want to then de-risk our overall destination development strategy. Some of the key components, I won't go through this in detail, but they are both primary and direct benefits. And you look at employment benefits, you look at how the government actually receives revenues from both from the federal, state, and a local perspective. You also look at the secondary benefits, where there are indirect benefits generated by businesses that are involved, the contractors, the consultants, like I mentioned previously, and also some form of either service taxation that is carried out, especially in terms of the hospitality industry. If you try to map this all out, basically, if you take a look at what's on the screen now, you're basically looking at different actors and their relevant outcomes. So government and property developers come together, they create destinations, and there is a destination microeconomy that is created for which we have to continuously assess the economic benefits. Then there's destination placemaking and place development. This ensures quality and timely delivery, and also ensures the proper management. In a lot of instances, we don't understand effectively the overall management principles of creating a new attraction or destination from a hospitality or even from an economic point of view. And that place management statement should be right at the onset in terms of how we carry out our overall delivery program. Then you have, of course, the all-embracing issue of asset sustainability. You don't only design, implement, develop, you manage, but you also sustain the assets. So basically keeping sufficient sinking funds to reinvest, continuously renewing the product, because the product life cycles of a lot of these elements, especially if they are thematic elements, especially if they are the theme parks, especially if they are experiential elements that are brought into a destination, continuous product renewability is important. The product renewability has been determined by the life cycle of an experience. In this experience economy, which all of you are probably involved in because it's hospitality and tourism and leisure, the life cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. Therefore, greater capital needs to be put aside to renew this. And that's where asset sustainability becomes a very important issue. I just provided this particular diagram to bring across a lot of the items and issues that I've just stated, but there are 4 major components that you need to focus on. The sociability, how you relate the product to the people, because they create the repeat visitorship, hence the NOI, the net operating income. The users and activities, how you embrace the general users and activities around the entire development and the larger global scape. And in terms of a lot of the thematic attractions that are being built, the concept of imagescape comes into the picture. You have landscape, you have also streetscape, you have a number of other different components that bring together the elements of a destination. Then there's imagescape, that is projecting the right image and retaining the interests of people to keep the repeat visitorship to keep the repeat visitorship on an upswing. Access and linkage, very important. Transportation, we talked about airlift, we talked about also transportation within a particular geographic area. And then also the comfort and image in terms of safety, in terms of what you're projecting as a safe destination. A lot of words here, but these are the key issues that one needs to look at in terms of carrying out the overall initial design and implementation operating statement. Very key issues that relate to the location, the connections, the transportation, the economic implications, the options for use, and also the benefit of the general population. Financing is a major issue, and it's even more important when you are dealing with mega projects. These mega projects need to be broken down into subcomponents. Each of these subcomponents need to be assessed whether they can be cross-subsidized. Now, a lot of large destination development is often broken up into loss leaders and then the profit components. The profit components are usually real estate related. They can be hard-nosed residential development. They can be lifestyle related development. They can be marinas. They can also relate to hospitality products such as hotels or service apartments. And this sometimes help to cross-subsidize some of the other loss leaders, like, for example, the thematic attractions that are built, the theme parks that are built. They have a longer payback period, and in the initial years, a lot of cross-subsidization of the destination needs to happen. And this is very important in terms of when you go out to raise debt, because the people who are giving debt these days are extremely granular, very forensic, and they really want to know where your cash flows are coming from. And you need to have this very clear balance between the cross-subsidization nature of a development and also the loss leadership of some of the components. In some of the developments that we have carried out, especially one which is a Shams Abu Dhabi development, we developed a structure of financing based on a Sukuk Mudaraba financing scheme where the proceeds of the real estate development help to subsidize, help to cross-subsidize some of the other components which then kept people coming back to the destination. This was fairly successful. It was raised in 2008. At the height of the financial crisis, we raised about $1.5 billion US, and that helped us to finance some of the developments that I'm going to talk about in some of my case studies as we go through this presentation. Very quickly, I'm just going to go through slides in quick succession. And these basically deal with the planning and design in the 5 stages of engaging various stakeholders in terms of their overall implementation of destinations. This is a very busy slide, but when you get the document, you'll be able to see that this is basically a very easy, ready reckoner for you to look at the implementation process of destination development. It can apply to any component. We have developed this over the years based on a lot of the experience that we have garnered from the various developments we have carried out in our experience. And it is useful to have a quick read at your leisure. That busy slide can be just decomposed into 4 main components for your ease of understanding. It's the baseline study, the city level analysis, which is the macroeconomic, the macro analysis, the urban planning and design framework, which is the micro analysis, and the implementation strategy, an extremely important thing. In the implementation strategy, there's also the management strategy of the entire destination. In carrying out those 4 major components, there are huge tasks involved in engaging stakeholders. These were some of the stakeholders that we have had to engage to ensure that we were touching the right parts of the entire economic ecosystem. So stakeholder consultation was the first stage. The second stage was city level analysis, which is creating the destination. A whole gamut of issues need to revolve around the creation, and this involves city management, transportation, the social aspects, the employment generation, and a lot of the real estate issues and aspects are also brought into the focus. Then these are also mapped onto some of the key issues related to transportation, managing peaks and troughs of the seasonality of this part of the world, because in the summer it's extremely hot and visitorship starts to drop. You need to have a lot of nimbleness in engaging and rescheduling a lot of your revenue generators. The culture, environment, natural resources, and economy are again brought together, and this is when we start looking at sustainability. Where we are carrying out our developments, we have very clear mandatory guidelines on STDAMA, which is sustainability, and STDAMA needs to be complied with for every development, including thematic attractions and also hospitality products, for at least one pearl, which is the minimum requirement for STDAMA. So sustainability objectives become very important right at the onset. Then you bring all these various issues from an opportunity point of view to map out the actual content for the destination. Now, in the first case study, I'm going to talk about Yas Island, which is basically a development that is located within the Abu Dhabi city metropolitan area, which we have developed over the last five years. Basically, Yas Island, as you can see, the little blob that is mapped out in green is located 50 minutes from Dubai, about 10 to 15 minutes from Abu Dhabi city center, and the pink lines that you see are the connectivity that currently exists for Yas Island vis-a-vis Abu Dhabi main island and also Dubai. We are very closely located to the Abu Dhabi airport. It's a 10-minute journey. We're very closely located to the Saadiyat Island destination, which is about a 10-minute journey from Yas Island, very clearly linked by a major highway. And so the important thing here is that it is a development that is very carefully planned from the beginning to become a huge economic multiplier for Abu Dhabi and the UAE. Yas Island is a 2,500 hectare development. It has got some 32 kilometers of waterfront, and it has numerous components. At the present moment, we have about 12 attractions on the island and 7 hotels. 7 hotels are owned by us. We manage them through various brands. We have 2,300 rooms, and we very actively ensure cross-marketing and also a very clear cross-fertilization of a lot of the attractions that are within Yas Island are spilled over to each and every one of the hotels that we own and manage through our various brands. The number of attractions that we have, basically there's the Ferrari World, which is situated on 20 hectares of land. It has a 10,000 design day capacity. It was opened in 2010. We built another water park, which is the Yas Water Park, which was opened middle of last year. That's on 11 hectares of land. It has a 7,000 design day capacity. We also have the Yas Links golf course, which is operational, and it was designed by Philip Kyle. It's an 18-hole par 3. We also have the F1 track, which was developed and opened in 2009. And essentially, that is a major component of attraction at a particular point in every year in November. There's a big convergence of population that comes into the island, and there's a huge spin-off. We've also developed a litany of other small attractions, such as the beach, ecotourism through the mangroves that are surrounding the entire island, where we have carried out a conservation program as well. So all in all, 12 different attractions on the island, seven hotels, providing convergence, very closely located to the airport, and we are still continuously developing this. What we are also now doing for Yas Island is we are creating the residential components. So various types of lifestyle residential components are being introduced. When we started off the development of Yas Island in 2008, it basically looked like this. And 3 years later, we completed the entire development together with the marina, the F1 track, Ferrari World, the Yas Water Park, and a couple of the other attractions as well. So implementation with a view to managing is very important. Implementation with a view to exiting is also extremely important. We carried this program out for some of the components as an agent for government. So we partnered with the government and we carried out a lot of the developments for them. Ferrari World I spoke about earlier on, currently in operation, and forms one of the major components of this particular destination. Yas Water Park already in implementation for the last 9 months. The Yas Links I spoke about just now, a very well-appointed golf course situated on Yas Island. The Yas Mall, which we started construction 2.5 years ago, now currently is almost complete and will be operational. It will be completed physically at the end of March this year, and it will be operationally open to the public in winter this year. So Yas Mall, again, another major anchor in a 2.3 million square feet of retail space located within a very focused agglomerative economy, which is the Yas Island, and we are continuously seeing an increase in visitorship. When Yas Island was first designed by the designers, the conceptual idea was to give an entire Yas Island a 10,000 design day, meaning about 300,000 visitors a month. So eventually, when it's completely developed, you would expect to see 300,000 visitors or mobile transient population within Yas Island. The infrastructure was therefore planned for this. So all the infrastructure that you see currently on Yas, if you ever do make a trip down to Abu Dhabi, please don't forget to come to Yas Island. You will see that the entire infrastructure has been laid out well in advance of the development. Another key issue, always ensure infrastructure is in advance of your development rather lagging, because implementation dates cannot be shifted, or rather opening dates cannot be shifted, and implementation is always on a fixed timeline. These are the 7 hotels that we have on the island, various brands, 2,300 rooms. And I will now quickly go into the development planning and feasibility aspects. Again, I will go through this very quickly. You don't really just do development planning and pretty pictures. You also got to make sure your feasibilities are right so that implementation and funding actually gives you the correct bottom line. So development feasibility inputs extremely important. Then the development feasibility responsibilities become extremely important. There are so many actors in the entire financial and the fiduciary relationship between these different entities are so important in the eventual net operating income that you require from your destination. And you can map this out into different types of structure. I have proposed a particular structure here and how it converges into the entire corporate consolidation from a bottom line management perspective. Okay, so destination planning and design framework, design team is involved, strategic brief, and then you carry out your urban planning and transportation, and then your concept master plans. And this involves a lot of nitty-gritty, detail, micro and macro analysis. The implementation strategy I spoke about in terms of how you go out and procure in packages, in small bites, and that all has to be laid out in a very, very clear program management fashion, because there's so many different actors coming together when you're creating a large destination of this nature. And finally, the destination place management. All becomes very important and needs to be thought through right at the onset. When you are designing and trying to go through your opportunity stage, you must know how you're going to manage this 3 to 5 years down the road. And this is place management. This concept of place management involves engaging the actors that are going to be involved in 5 years' time right at the onset. They must know how you're going to manage. What kind of management framework are you going to put into place? What type of hierarchy? Are you collecting service charges? Are you allocating sinking funds so that you can carry out your product renewability and have sufficient capital to carry out this product renewability? These are some of the major issues that I have listed down in terms of brand management, place management, and also the placemaking that continuously is carried out for large destinations. The second case study that I want to quickly go through is actually of Sentosa Island. I was involved in the development of Sentosa Island for nearly 15 years, and these are the number of components that I was involved in all those years. Sentosa Island is situated right at the south of Singapore Island, if you know Singapore Island and have been to Singapore before. Essentially, it is part and parcel of what is known as the Southern Islands Cluster. Sentosa Island is actually connected to the mainland of Singapore with a bridge, so it is actually very near, but still yet that far. It is an escape for the entire population of Singapore and for a lot of the tourists that come through into Singapore. So Sentosa Island evolved. It evolved from a military base back from the times of the British presence there. In 1850, they developed 4 forts over the years on the island. Later on, degazetted as a military island. Then it was then transformed into a passive attraction in the early years, and slowly that was geared up to become one of the major top-of-the-mind attractions in Asia at the present moment. There are a number of key components that make this island successful. One is access, and you can see main access is extremely important, spine roads, and the retention of a lot of the nature. A lot of Sentosa Island has been retained, nearly 60% of the island is retained as green, only 40% has ever been developed, and that is an internal control. The whole island is both public and semi-private, because you have waterfront housing as well in Sentosa Cove, and you also have the integrated resort and some of the other natural parts of the island. And essentially, the east and west part of the island denote the public and the semi-private, as you can see on the screen. The north and south part of the public area are quite important. The south part are more passive attractions. The north part is essentially the resorts world, which is already developed and currently in operations, and they have a Universal Studios there, as well as 6 or 7 other different types of attractions and 5 different types of hotel propositions. So a very important integrated resort. This was introduced back in 2006 and 7 by the Singapore government to improve the overall desirability of Singapore as a destination. And since then, visitorship to Singapore, and hence also to Sentosa, has been on the upswing. This is just simply to show you the interconnectivity between the different zones. So here you are dealing with not a greenfield site in the true sense of the word, but you were dealing with a constrained site which had a lot of different heritage attributes that needed to be retained. At the same time, to provide a sufficient upscale experience which would keep people coming back from a visitorship point of view. Another slide showing the transportation importance, basically the breakdown between hotels and attractions on the island. This is basically, again, a clusterization of the different primary hubs within the island. And then to look at the semi-private part of it, where you have in the south, Sentosa Cove, a very high-end waterfront residential development, and the north part of the semi-private part is basically 2 golf courses which are very popular, and they hold a number of signature events throughout the year. Sentosa Cove, now completely developed over the years, it was a very important component in the cross-subsidization of the entire destination. The real estate residential product helped to actually promote the attractiveness of Sentosa Island, increase its visitorship, and also help to carry out a lot of the other developments on the recreational part of the island. So that's Sentosa Cove today. In the beginning, it was just a body of water between 2 small islands. It was reclaimed, reshaped, remaster planned, and then sold as a very important economic multiplier residential product, not only for Sentosa, but also for Singapore as a whole. Another view. And okay, so the way forward, I think it's back to basics. For us, it's always back to basics. The exit strategy is important. How you're going to manage the development is important. How you're going to fund it is important. The design is important, but you can get a lot of actors to come in there and do a lot of different types of designs. All that must make sense and must be implementable and must be manageable at the end. Most important thing I stress here is you must know your exit strategy. So I think there are still a lot of opportunities from a destination development point of view anywhere in the world. The important facts I have outlined here in the presentation. In the other physical paper, you will have a ready reckoner, a guidebook, sort of, in terms of how you can design, conceptualize, design, implement, and manage. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I come to, I think, my last slide. I thank you for being an attentive audience, and if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. And I think I'm just 5 minutes or 10 minutes above the timing given to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gurjeet. We will now welcome question and answers from the floor.
ندعوكم الآن لحضور جلسة حوارية معمقة مع مستر غورجيت سانغ وغريغوري كلاركسون.
There is a roving mic, just a show of hand, and the mic will come to you. We have a question here up the front. Oh, you already, okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. My name is Omar Al-Mubarak from Saudi Commission Tourism. I would like to thank everybody. It's a very nice presentation for this project. And my question, please, to Mr. Gurjit Singha, from your experience as a project managers, what is the major issue take a lot of work and time in study phase, in the study phase, in the preparation phase? And what is the risk during that? This is the first question about question. The second question regarding the licensing between the government and private sector. Is it you have one-stop shop for that, or it is a private something? Okay. You understand what my point is, second one? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I think very relevant.
Thank you.
Right at the onset, when you are looking at a particular destination, one needs to de-risk it by breaking it down into the most implementable components. So the de-risking process is looking at what provides you perhaps the highest amount of future NOI. That is the one that should be developed first. A lot of times, developments are carried out in terms of building the lost leaders, and that requires a huge cross-subsidization. One or two of the key components of a destination is actually lifestyle real estate. And if you start looking at lifestyle real estate as the first stage of development, which is highly amenitized, lifestyle real estate that is highly amenitized provides the seed capital for a lot of the other amenities. So even your funding and equity contributions then start to look a little bit more manageable. So the second issue which comes to the mind is managing the financing. So if you are de-risking it by looking at those that provide you the best revenue portfolio in the beginning to then provide the seed capital for the next, then funding becomes more manageable. So the second issue is funding. The third issue, not in terms of importance, but the third issue is actually your exit strategy. You know, a lot of times, revenue generating developments are kept for anything between 3 to 5 years for stabilization. After that, there must be a clear exit strategy to recycle the capital. So you can develop hotels, and until they reach a steady state and can give you the good revenues that you want, you must be in a position to then recycle it, either by selling it into funds or selling the developments out in components and so on and so forth. This de-risking helps you to then reinvest into the destination because there's capital recycling involved in that. Okay. I hope that kind of answers the first question. And now I've forgotten your second question. Licensing, okay. Okay, in terms of the permitting and the development process, the partnership with government has to be established right in the beginning, because when you go to them with a proposition and you tell them that this is what we are trying to do, you must be very clear in articulating the economic benefits. So that's why I stressed a little bit on in my presentation about the economic multiplier effects. These need to be assessed because that's the proposition you are putting to the government. And then that enables them to either A, set up the infrastructure to enable you to move fast in terms of a one-stop center, or also in terms of clearer rules and regulations which they need to develop, or also in terms of just a very clear working committee that is brought together to ensure that you are able to discharge and develop a big destination like this. So these are clear these are very clear things that need to be done right in the beginning. So sometimes the planning part of it takes a long time, but the implementation must be fast. So we took a few years to plan very carefully with all the stakeholders, and then when we jumped in, we implemented very quickly. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I had a question as well for Gregory Clarkson. So thank you for your presentation at first. I was just wondering actually if there was a three-dimensional model available somewhere. And I would like to know if it's possible to walk through the whole zoo within one day, or if there is an intention to make sure that people have to walk for 2 or 3 days into the zoo to make sure they visit everything within the zoo. And I saw that there was a small theme park in the Villaggio, and I heard that you were trying to make to work together with Villaggio, and if it's possible to make a combination in between the zoo and the theme park actually. Thank you.
going high tech here. Okay, interesting questions. The first one about is it a one-day event? Is it do you go and see it and it's done? Definitely not. I mean, the whole premise is that this is multiple attractions, multiple visitation, multiple appeal on many different levels. So we've designed it around the village in that way so that there's a lot of different product and a lot of different things to do. And what we actually call instantaneous consumption or instantaneous participation. If we can get the people to go to this space, they may be enticed by association or exposure to participate. So that's the premise number one, is to get the local population to make this a place that we go to in social congregation on a daily or weekly basis just to hang out. And then by default may participate in many different things. So that's important to understand. Now from a tourist standpoint, in our penetration forecast, it's a one-stop experience. You're expecting that you're going to fly over here. You're not going to come back and do repeat visitation. We're going to try to capture you once, and we expect you to participate once a year in whatever you participate in, and we've allowed for that. In the connectivity to Villaggio Mall, I applaud your intelligence how you managed to get all that, because that's a pretty top shelf right now. But there is ongoing dialogue with Villaggio to look for how we're going to synergize physically. Are we going to try to come through the roof of their building and bust the barrier, which is an interesting challenge, and arrive in Gondoliana, which is their interior theme park, and feed off that energy pattern? That's a question. Whether we reside on the roof, whether we reside outside, maybe we stop somewhere in Aspire Park, I don't know. It's in front of us still. But I'm encouraged that somebody's talking about actually making the physical connection from the Villaggio side. I'm not sure if that answers. Do you have any other question?
Yeah, I was just curious about the three-dimensional model. I saw the video actually, but maybe there is a model or a sketch somewhere that we can see.
Yes, we're in schematic design. The rivet model, which is the three-dimensional hardware that the architects use to design these spaces, is in development. It is not complete yet by any stretch. It's about halfway through its journey. So it's not available for people to see or dig into. Most people, to be able to negotiate and navigate through such a thing, you'd have to be highly trained anyhow. Really what we've got for promotional purposes is what you've seen today.
Thank you. Now we'll close the question and answer session, and we'll have a short refreshment break. Thank you.
تفضلوا الآن سيداتي سادتي إلى استراحة صباحية. شكراً.